All right, sit down. Good afternoon. Or did I really mean the other? I don't know. Welcome. It's good to see y'all this evening. I'm glad you've chosen to be here tonight to lift up the needs and the prayer needs and concerns that we have for people within. You paying attention now? You with me? Okay. The prayer needs of other people that are here and all around. Let me share with you at the beginning. We're going to look at the proverb for today, chapter of Proverbs, which would be what? Proverbs what? 17, chapter 17. You have a chance to, well, y'all had a chance to read it today. I hope that you took advantage of the opportunity to read through it. A number of the nuggets there. Remember this, we moved into a section here where, it's like couplets. We talked about that last week, where it says this person, the wise person will act this way, the foolish person this way, the one that is hardworking will do this, the person that, practices folly or laziness, this is what's going to happen to them. Excuse me, this has been going on all day. So what we find is a parallel, I believe. A number of the little nuggets of wisdom that we have in Proverbs 17 has to do with being very cautious about what we say and when we say it, and how about this, how we say it. So what we say, when we say it, and how we say it. It'll be my prayer tonight that as I share this with y'all, that my wife will not watch the video recording of the message today, because I'll give you an example. A number of years ago, as we were planning our lives together, I went and I bought a whole bunch of furniture for the house that I was living in, thinking that this will be something that we will use. I took her with me, and she, was like, well, what do you think about this? What do we think about that? Oh, that's great, that's good, that's nice. And so I bought this furniture, put it in the house. I proposed, we're preparing to move, and she begins to ask me, well, what are you going to do with all of that furniture? It's like, I bought that furniture for us. Well, I don't like that furniture. I don't want that furniture in my house. But you were with me whenever we bought the furniture. I was with you when you bought your furniture. I was like, oh, okay. Well, I misread that, completely. And that's not the worst part of the story yet. So we are moving some of this furniture and trying to get it into a place where we can sell it. And as we're moving it, it's a pretty heavy sofa, and so I said to her, I don't think you can pick that up. Now I do that with college boys all the time because I'm playing with their heads. All I have to do to a college boy is say, I don't think you're going to be able to handle that. Oh my gosh. They'll pick up 3 times their weight and carry it across the room just to make a point. And then, of course, I praise them, like, oh, that's wonderful. That's a good job, I would never play with anybody's mind, though, So anyway, I said, I don't really think you should pick that up. I think that's going to be too heavy. You shouldn't pick that up. And she reached down and she just grabbed it, and I'm like, wow. I said, wow, you're really stout. I feel like a comedian tonight. I don't know. It's like instead of leading a... You're still married? Very, very fortunately, yes. My shoulders have always been out of, had issues, ever since it, because it hurt when she dropped it. I was like, and she said, what did you call me? Now, I didn't have Google at the time, you have to understand. And when I said stout, I meant strong. She did not. Apparently, she took it the way all the rest of y'all that are looking at me and grinning and laughing took it, because, she was offended. Sometimes we got to be very, very careful what we say, when we say it, and also what else? How we say it. There's a parallel if you look in the New Testament with me. We will get to Proverbs chapter 17, but turn with me to James chapter 3. James chapter 3, I consider all of the book of James to be somewhat like the Proverbs of the New Testament. And I think I've shared that theory or belief with you before. James, the book of James. James was a half-brother to Jesus. James wrote his book to the first century church after Jesus had ascended back into heaven. And the church was being formed, and numerous churches had started all around. It's referred to as a circular letter, or sometimes it's called a Catholic epistle or letter, meaning that it was one that a church would receive, and then they might make a copy of it, or they would make a copy of it, and maybe some individuals in the church, they would make a copy of it as well. And then with it being circular, they would then pass the letter on to another church. And then they would read it. Well, this letter from James, half-brother of Jesus, who had become a leader within the Christian church by this time, he is very, very black and white. He's very direct. Only 108 verses altogether in James's letter. And there is really not any gray in there. Although oftentimes, if we'll be honest, we like to kind of try to live in the gray. James is saying basically, if you say that you are not just a believer, because he's also the one who says, you say that you believe in Jesus, great. Who else believes? Yeah, the demons believe, and what do? They tremble. That's in chapter 1, from James. So you see kind of the mindset and the way he's thinking as he writes this letter to the first century church, because he's trying to be very direct with them. Here once again, sometimes I might say something, and Melanie will turn to me and she will say, "Don't be rude," or "Don't be ugly." And I will turn and look at her and I will say, "I'm not being rude. I'm not being ugly. I'm being direct." You can borrow that if you want to, and see how it works out for you, okay? Let me write that down real quick. I'll put that in next. I got to put that in next week's sermon if we can work that out. Is there a song we ought to go along with that? We'll see if we can. Yeah. I've already shared with you. I've been transparent with you from the very beginning of the fruits of the Spirit. Which one have I shared with you that I struggle with the most? Yeah, well, y'all knew that. Yeah, y'all have learned that, from our time. And I know that I am not alone, with that. I can become very fixated on what I'm doing and whatever goal I'm trying to achieve or, task I'm trying to accomplish. And, if things are not falling sometimes the way that they do, I can find myself, if I do not catch myself, I can find myself saying things that I later regret saying, or I can find myself saying things in a manner that I wish I had not said it quite that way, or maybe that forceful. Well, it's always been happening, or James would not have written about it in the first century. And so if you turn and you look in James chapter 3, you find this. This is what he says. "Not many of you should presume to be teachers, or my brothers, because you know that we who teach will be what? Judged how? Stricter, or more strictly, is what my version says. We all stumble in many ways. If anyone is never at fault in what he says, he is a perfect man, able to keep his whole body in check." And how many of us can say that we are perfect? None of us. I had an encounter with a student this week. The student comes to the podium, the platform podium where I was teaching after class, and is upset. Apparently, I had counted this student absent one day last week. I was like, okay, well, were you here? You know, yes, I was here. I was okay, well, schedule a time and come by and meet with me, because I had another class to go to. You know, I said, schedule a time, we'll sit down together and, you know, we'll take a look at it. You know, I always tell students, I check the roll once whenever they come in. I check it one time. And after that, if I've marked you absent, if I've marked them absent, it's their responsibility to come to me at the end of class and say, hey, I don't know if you noticed, but I came in just a few minutes late, you know, and I'm fine with that. I mean, sometimes things happen. We have commuters and you get behind. I've been late coming here because of a wreck or whatever. You know what I mean? Sometimes things just happen. Now, if it's habitually, we're going to have a little talk about that, you know, and because I'm of the mindset, if I got students that can drive all the way from Columbia and get to class on time, then somebody else that can roll out of the bed over there in the football dorm and get their breakfast and still get to class on time. You see the point. And so this student is saying, well, you marked me absent. And I'm like, okay, come by and see me. And then, you know, then the students kind of started like mouthing off. It's like, well, you don't want to help me. You don't, you know, all this. I'm like, I just said, come by and see me, and we'll take a look at it. It's nothing to get upset about. Student then began to swear. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I haven't had coffee, and this is an 8 o'clock class, and I've taught 3 times the length of their attention span. But I said, careful. That behavior can have you thrown out of a class permanently. Stormed out, went away. I'm thinking, I don't know if I'll ever see that student again or not. You know, they're probably going to drop the class. Yeah. But when I got back to the office, there was a message from that student. Can I come by and see you at such and such time? I messaged right back. I was like, well, I have somebody come at that time, but I can see you 20 minutes later. Fine. They come. They came in to the scheduled time, and I looked at the student, and I just kind of said, you know, I was using my body language with this. I said, you know, it kind of seems like we kind of got off on the wrong way, we got on the wrong direction, you know, this morning. You know, let's just like kind of take a breath. Let's sit down and look at what, you know, the situation is. And the student then said, no, you were rude to me. If you're rude to me, then I'm going to be rude to you. You can't expect anybody to respect you if you're not going to respect them. And well, let me ask you this. Have you ever been in a circular conversation with somebody before, where it just seems like you just keep going round and round and round? I've seen students that have started fussing with one another out on the campus, and it doesn't matter what is said, they just got to have the last word. You know that? I've seen people that get into this, well, I then. Well, I then. Well, I then. Well, I then. You know, it's like over and over and over, and it's just kind of like, stop, you know. And so, but I can remove myself from that. I can set that boundary. And I said, okay, I'm not getting into a circular conversation with you about this. I said that I would meet with you. We are meeting. Let's deal with whatever, you know, the issue is that you have. You said that I counted you absent. I need to see proof that you were in class. Well, how in the world am I going to prove that? Show me your notes. Which notes? The ones from the day that you say I counted you absent. She pulls up the iPad and begins to click and look around and hands me the iPad. I look. Student has the notes. Most of them. There were some blanks. I use outlined notes. It's easier to teach with. I can teach faster. I got 27 books of the New Testament, 39 in the Old Testament to cover. You know, so I'm using these guided outline notes. Pay attention to the lecture, fill in the blanks, fill in the bullet points. 90+% of the students who take my class make an A, but I have students that fail every semester. It's one way or the other. So I look at the notes. I say, okay, I see that you have some of the notes. You didn't finish them all. There's several blanks here that I see. And I'm saying that because I'm concerned for her. She needs to have the notes to prepare for the midterm. But she pops right back and says, well, that's your fault because you teach too fast. I can't write down everything that you say because you teach too fast. Okay. I was like, well, it shows here that, okay, I see that you were here. Let me fix this, apparently, but I said, I just want to remind you, if you are running late or if you're late, just come by the desk and let me know, and I'll mark you. Well, you took the roll too early. I mean, it was nothing that could be said that she was not going to be the what? The victim. Verse 3, when we put bits into the mouths of horses to make them obey us, we can turn the whole animal. Or take ships, for example. Although they are so large and are driven by strong winds, they are steered by a very small what? Rudder, wherever the pilot wants it to go. Likewise, the tongue is a small part of the body, but it makes a great boast. Consider what a great forest is set on fire by a small spark. What do you think that imagery is referring to? I think it refers to when sometimes if we can just choose to be silent, if we can just choose to not engage in foolish behavior with someone else, that we can de-escalate situations that can wind up being catastrophic. The tongue also is a fire, a world of evil among the parts of the body. It corrupts the whole person, sets the whole course of his life on fire, and is itself set on fire by hell. All kinds of animals, birds, reptiles, and creatures of the sea are all tamed and have been tamed by whom? By man. But no man can tame the tongue. It is a restless evil full of deadly poison. And then this passage here has always troubled me because it says, with the tongue we praise our Lord and Father, and with it we curse men who have been made in God's likeness. Out of the same mouth come praise and cursing. My brothers, this should not be. Can both fresh water and salt water flow from the same spring? My brothers, can a fig tree bear olives or a grapevine bear figs? Neither can a salt spring produce fresh water. And you continue to read there in chapter 3. He reflects back more upon their two kinds of wisdom, and you can read that for yourself. So if you go back with me and you look at Proverbs chapter 17, you're going to find that there are several parallels to that teaching from James. Once again, James is very black and white. You say that you're a follower, not just a believer. You say that you're a follower of Christ. Here are some things that you should be doing. You say that you're a follower of Christ, then here are some things that you should not be doing. Very black and white, very much to the point. No circular conversation, no victim. It's either we're working to do the right thing or we're trying to excuse bad behavior and continue to justify ourselves in those situations. That's why I believe if we will be intentional about not just reading these, but studying these every day, and they begin to stick in our heads, folks, they can change not only our lives, but they can change the lives of people that are around us. Just these little small nuggets of wisdom. Better a dry crust Wait a minute. Yeah. Better a dry crust with peace and quiet than a house full of feasting with what? And where do you think the strife comes from? The things that we choose, to say. Verse 5 sticks out to me. He who mocks the poor shows contempt for their maker. Whoever gloats over disaster will not go unpunished. I think I shared with you a couple of weeks ago a student making the statement, a former student coming in and leaving and saying, well, I'm not going to stay. This is not my crowd. And, it just kind of, hit me, when the student said that. But the Proverbs helped me. Because what the Proverbs did is the Proverbs helped me to see and to take a breath and to realize this student is not being prideful at all. It's coming across that way. But really, this student is very insecure. And so they're putting a mask on. And how do I know that? Because just last night, had a great crowd of students that came to worship, had some new people that came to worship once again. Trail spoke, which he just does an outstanding job. Y'all welcomed him, and he just really enjoyed being here. And so he does a great job. There were two of our former students who came back, who I took on a mission trip back in March, and these girls are just. They're just really kind of chill bumps talking about them. They're just very, very special to me. And I miss them. Like I told you before, that's one of the things I'm going through, this year is that, I lost a number of students this year that I'm really close to. And I miss seeing them every day, if that makes sense. I know it makes sense. You understand that place. Well, they surprised me by showing up at worship. And we had the best time together. I just enjoyed seeing them. But when the worship service was over, they walked into my office, and here's what they said to me. They said, Dr. Stan, we were scared to death to come in. They were on the leadership team, back in May. They went on mission trips with me in March. There were great servants and Bible study leaders and, all during the year. And yet here in September, they said, we were scared to death to come in because we knew it was going to be so much different than it had been when we were students, which is true. Collegiate ministry changes very, very, very quickly. But do you see the difference between the way those girls communicated and what that other student did, a couple of weeks ago? They owned how they felt. They said to me, we were nervous, we were scared to come in because we knew it was going to be so different. I said to them, I've said it, you've heard me say it to other people, I always want you to feel welcomed home here, which is what I said to a couple of 3 other students who came back. Well, I had one student that came. His sister is a student at the college, and she has not come to the BSU yet because she was afraid. She was afraid to come through the door. And so he drove from Hattiesburg to come with his sister, for the first time, and to introduce her to me and to Trail, and to try to help to, start a relationship, because he was very timid when he was a student. He was very introverted. But just over the course of a couple of years, I saw him grow, and now he's bringing his sister because it means that much to him that he wants to help her get through the door. To come. You do realize that there are people that will pass by this church, and it's not that they won't come in the church, not because they have anything at all against the church. They're afraid to come into the church. It makes them anxious to come into the church. That's why we need to be welcoming but not overbearing, with people. I can remember those old days of, if you're a visitor with us, you stay seated and all of our members are going to stand, and, and it's like, let's put a spotlight on everybody that, Nobody likes that. If a new minister comes, new pastor, when he comes, don't do that, to people, because that's not very welcoming. What's welcoming are the people that are sitting around just saying hello, good morning, hey, I'm glad that you're here, telling them your name, and that you're glad that they are there. I know I've told you that story too about going, and the pastor had invited me to come and to say a prayer at the beginning of worship. And I got in two old ladies' seats. Y'all remember that? Y'all remember? And one of them came up and she had a cane and she beat up against the side of the pew because I was in her seat. And I got up and I moved a couple of pews over, and here comes another one, and she did exactly the same thing to me. I'm telling you, it took everything in me not to walk out the back door of that church. I served at that church for 5 years. I met my wife in that church. In the past. But that's how unwelcomed I felt. And you know what? It really wasn't these two old ladies. See, I caught myself. Did y'all notice that? It really wasn't them. You can't change somebody else's behavior. All you can do is change your own. You know what bothered me the most? Is that there were people that watched what I was going through. And there wasn't one person that said, hey, Stan, I'm glad that you're back. Welcome. Glad to see you. Come on over here and sit by my family. Nobody. Nobody did that. They just all watched. I found a seat. I sat down. Pastor called me to come up. I voiced my prayer. I walked back down the steps. And I'm sorry, I ain't perfect. I try. But Jesus didn't have nothing to do with it. And I didn't say anything verbally. But those eyes, yeah. I'm told I have a look. I don't know what that means. I ain't ever seen the look before. But I'm told that I have this look. And if there is one, I used all that I had within me to do it as I walked by those ladies with the canes. Folks, take a moment and read through the rest of Proverbs chapter 17. See what other nuggets are there that relate to being very cautious about what we allow ourselves to say, when we say things, and how we say things to other people. What James say? The tongue can start a fire that can be catastrophic. I'm paraphrasing that. But there's so many things that we can avoid, so many conflicts that we can avoid. We can't control the other person, but we can control our behavior. Now, I'm not saying allow somebody to walk all over you, because one of the other things that I teach in New Testament is, how did Jesus deal with controversy? And sometimes people want to say, oh, well, Jesus was just timid and he was polite and he was kind. Jesus said, turn the other cheek, which is true. I mean, that is in Scripture. But how did Jesus deal with confrontation? He confronted it head on. Every time. Every time. He confronted it head on. So I'm not saying, allow others just to walk all over you. I'm saying choose wisdom in how you communicate with others. The Proverbs are helping me. Not perfect, but they are helping me. That student that gave me such a hard time, I'm here today and I'm asking you, without me mentioning that student's name, will you just pray for that student? Because I know that something else is going on in that student's life that had absolutely nothing to do with what we dealt with this week. There's no doubt she needs our prayer. It was my hope that when she came to my office, we could go a little deeper and I could find out, but she shut me down. It didn't happen. but she also didn't drop the class. So will you pray for her? Will you read chapter 17 and see what nuggets stand out to you in regards to how we speak, when we speak, and what it is that we say? Father, I thank you for the power of your word, and I thank you for being reminded of how quick we can choose to do the right thing in seeking your guidance and your wisdom in our lives, or we can focus more upon our own selves and wind up possibly not just hurting other people, but hurting ourselves as well. I thank you for the guidance of your godly wisdom. And I just pray, Father, that we'll be as intentional as we can possibly be as the body of Christ to be the example that you've called us to be the light in a very dark world that you have called us to be. I thank you that Jesus was the perfect example of that. And it is in his